And we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining. My name is Amanda Young. I am moderating this lovely NCPEID collaborative, and we are joined by two very lovely guests joining us today. First, we have Suzanna Dillon, full professor at Texas Women's University. She's going to be speaking on advocacy. And then we'll have Matt Barker join us, and he's presenting also on advocacy, and Matt is joining us as an itinerant adaptive PE teacher in Fairfax, Virginia. So welcome, Suzanna and Matthew. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm going to go ahead and get started just so that we have time for questions at the end, because I know that I might be talking about some things that spur some questions, and I'm sure Matt for sure will be having some things that he's sharing that will spur some questions. So I want to thank everybody. Say good day, because I don't know if it's morning or evening or morning or afternoon, I should say, at your house. I'm thrilled to be here speaking to y'all about some of the advocacy initiatives that globally the consortium, NCPEID, has been engaged in over the last several years, but more specifically, recently, the Policy and Advocacy Committee, which has changed names, just so everybody knows. It used to be the Legislative Action Committee. Now it's the Policy and Advocacy Committee. So I'm going to give you literally highlights. There are many more things that have been done over the past couple of years, but here's some highlights just so you know and you're in the loop. So advocacy is generally just the act of supporting or promoting a particular cause, idea, or in our case, a lot of times a policy. It involves raising awareness and influencing members of the public so that we can shape their opinions and then ultimately, hopefully, engage lawmakers, policymakers, and other key decision makers so that we impact change. It's essentially gathering voices together and helping amplify them to make change. What's missing from this kind of definition or description is the element of time. And I want to make sure that when I'm presenting these activities that we've been doing, it's clear that advocacy often takes, or advocacy work, I should say, often takes considerable amounts of time to accomplish your desired change. And the time span is often inclusive of these periods of like intense time-sensitive events that require prompt and coordinated responses. So and you'll see that in some of these initiatives that we discussed today. So it's really important when you're talking about advocacy, whether it's trying to make a change in your individual building or in your school district or in your community or at your state level, that you're building that team around you. Speaking of teams, the Policy and Advocacy Committee is designed for consortium to promote legislation favorable to physical education and recreation for persons with disabilities at the federal level, and then also to support at the state and local level individuals who are trying to impact change. We collaborate with, and you'll see this as well, with a good number of other organizations such as CEC and Shape America on a variety of different endeavors. And the Policy Advocacy Committee is comprised of myself, Brad Wiener, Sally Miedema, Michael Laughlin, Beth Foster, Andy Dugavito, and my apologies, and Aubrey Shaw, who's in Utah. And then I would be remiss if I didn't also miss or note Linda Hilgenbrink, who used to be on the committee and is no longer on the committee. One of our actions is to disseminate documents that may be of assistance to folks in higher education or in EC-12 educational settings as they work to advocate for APE and interscholastic sport. So if you're not aware, on the NCPEID website, there is a dedicated advocacy section that includes policy papers and guidance documents, the OSERS policy letters, and the OCR policy letter specific to interscholastic sport, an IEP checklist, and we're looking to add to this repository as well. In that policy guidance letter, what you'll see is a document that was designed and published in 2021 specifically for administrators. So it's a brief document, really with those administrators' short attention span and time bandwidth really is what it is. They're so overbooked. So that all the critical information is on the first page. And then supporting documentation is on the next 2 pages. It notes important legislative definitions, and then presents a list of what SCAs and LEAs must do regarding physical education for students with disabilities. So if you haven't seen the guidance document, please pop onto the website and give it a look. Also note that the Policy and Advocacy Committee is currently reviewing and updating the letter, so there should be a revised version that comes out in 2025. At the state and local level, this is really where most of the PAC work and a great deal of our time is spent is working at the state level. And I'm going to just highlight some, not all of the state level efforts that the PAC has supported. We encourage you to reach out if you are having an issue or you're thinking of trying to make some changes at the state level, and we'll support you however we can. In Maine, we worked in support of the Maine Adapted Physical Education Task Force, and myself, Garth Tymason, who I see is on this call, represented NCPEID and provided testimony to the Maine Department of Education investigation about adapted PE. The investigation was a result of a parent filed complaint against her son's school district regarding pretty much all things related to adapted PE and as a part of APE. Including assessment and eligibility. The complaint was filed with the Maine Department of Ed and investigated, and there was a report that came out indicating that essentially that the district needed to make some changes. And what's nice about this report is that those letters can then be used by other school districts and other parents and other teachers as an indication of how the state interpreted IDEA. In Tennessee, members of the PAC had conversations with Heather, who is the physical education, physical activity school health coordinator at the Department of Education in Tennessee. We provided some information to support the state because what they're looking at doing right now is trying to determine A, how is adapted PE delivered in the state of Tennessee, and B, what would it take for us to possibly add an APE credential to ensure that quality APE services are being delivered in Tennessee. This effort is in alignment with the Project Connect initiative, which you'll hear more about in a second. And as a result, Tennessee was invited to participate in this Project Connect initiative. In Washington, and I see Tony Bader just popped on. This was Tony Bader's multi-year labor of love that I was thrilled to be able to support. And the Policy and Advocacy Committee really worked to help her from looking at the initial situation, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Tony, that was to address who could assess students in the state of Washington for adapted PE services. Initially, APE teachers couldn't do it. It had to be related service personnel. All the way up through the new specialty endorsement that now exists. Last fall, major efforts in advocacy paid off in Washington as the State Professional Educator Standards Boards, or PESB, I believe they call them, approved new adapted physical education essential learning statements, which is essentially what the specialist needs to know, and the associated adapted physical education specialty endorsement. So there's now an endorsement in the state of Washington. The language in the essential learnings and in the APE endorsement included that the endorsement could only be added to the teaching license of somebody who was already certified in special ed or in physical education, rather than letting administrators also add the endorsement. So that language was supported by the consortium and adopted as recommended. Earlier this year, the state of Washington rolled out official guidance on adapted PE, and that document now exists and is available for all school districts in the state of Washington, its teachers and its parents to use as they advocate for adapted physical education services in the state. It's worth noting too that the NCPEID letter that we submitted was cited multiple times in the hearing, and NCPEID is also cited in the new state guidance document. In South Carolina, the Policy and Advocacy Committee supported efforts of Sally Miedema, SCAPERD, which is their state organization, and Representative Herndon on a House bill that mandated maintaining minutes in physical education K-5, and then adding minutes at the middle school level. We included letters of support into House testimony, and the process in general, and full credit to Sally on this because she was really the tip of the sword, if you will. The proposed legislation in 2023 made it through the initial committee, through the first reading in the House, through subcommittee hearings, and passed unanimously during the second reading in March of 2024. Without opposition and major changes. When the bill moved to the Senate, it had its first reading and then was referred to the Education Committee, which is standard procedure, and continued to be unopposed. Unfortunately, the legislative session in the state of South Carolina ends in May, and this didn't move until the end of March, so it ended up dying during legislative session, but there are plans to reintroduce the new bill in a new legislative session in South Carolina, and we will again be there to provide support. There is also discussion of a different bill that's tied to assessment in physical education, and again, we will be involved in supporting those efforts. Here's one you might not know about as well. NCPEID has been involved with the Full Funding Coalition, IDEA Full Funding Coalition, for several years. And I think since 2021, I think was the first year that I started working with them. Since 1975, when Congress originally passed IDEA, the intent was to ensure that states would provide every student with FAPE, and the states would not have to take on this big financial burden, to the extent that the federal government indicated that they would pay the 40% of excess costs to provide special education and related services. And unfortunately, that 40% commitment has never been met. And that 40% commitment is what we are referring to when we say full funding. Okay. So this coalition of 50 plus organizations, including CEC, the National Center for Learning Disabilities, the School Superintendents Association, and others, all collectively work together to advance efforts to realize full funding for IDEA. So our activities have consistently involved joint appropriation letters to both the House and the Senate, budget request letters to OMB, supportive legislation as it's introduced that would improve funding in special education, including the 2021 and 2023 introduction of the IDEA Full Funding Act. Senator Chris Van Hollen and Representative Jared Huffman have been champions of this. And what the bill does in both of its iterations in 2021 and 2023 is put IDEA on a 10-year glide path to meeting that 40%. Okay. This is really important that we are involved in these efforts because our NCPEID is listed on all of the letters of support. So we are a part of the discussion in clearly advocating our interest to have that percentage raised from 11 or 14%, looking at depending on whose numbers you're looking at, all the way back up to 40, okay, or up to 40. And it's important to know also that we've been involved in helping garner bipartisan support for the bill. So there are currently 33 senators on Senate Bill 2217 as co-sponsors and 157 bipartisan representatives as co-sponsors on the House bill, which is HR 4515. Given that we're talking about government shutdown, probably not likely that this will move forward, but it would then be reintroduced in the next legislative session. Okay. For fiscal year 2025, some of the things that we are working on or have already completed are joint appropriation letters to the Hill. NCPEID again is a signing member. Note that we did ask for the first year of the glide path to be an increase to $16.3 billion for special education. We have meetings on Capitol Hill with appropriators and Senate Republican offices about the IDEA Full Funding Act. We've supported circulation of Dear Colleague letters for IDEA, and the coalition is building a website, so you'll be able to see every time there's a letter that we've signed off onto, you'll be able to access that and access other green resources, and see us as a member of the 50+ member organizations. One of the other things that we are involved in as a coalition is the National Coalition on Personnel Shortages in Special Education and Related Services. It's a mouthful, but it is a coalition, a national level coalition comprised of 30+ participating member organizations. And what we are really dedicated to in our advocacy efforts is addressing the issue of shortages in special education and related services personnel, to include CISPs. Okay, and that's what you'll see on this right-hand side. We've done a lot of work in developing promotional materials and infographics to help push out there the fact that there's such critical shortage in special ed. In those efforts, APE has been included in shortages reported on the website and in promotional materials. And adapted physical education was also included in last year's town hall that we hosted, that NCPEID hosted. I helped with the development, and then Brad Wiener was an invited guest to come in and talk about how he's addressing personnel shortages in adapted physical education in Northern Virginia. And again, NCPEID was a part of that conversation. Timely as this presentation is, there is a town hall later today, and you are welcome to join. We had, I'm going to be wrong on the number here, but it was north of 500 people on the last town hall. It is later today. It's a free event. Here's the information. If you go to www.specialedshortages.org, you can grab the link. If you're not able to grab it from our presentation today. It's a free event that is really geared towards university faculty, LEA administrators, SEA administrators, and sharing ideas that maximize how do we pull people into the college and university pipeline. How do we facilitate partnerships with local school districts and universities that really give our students quality field placements? And then how do we recruit and retain students from marginalized populations? So those are some of the efforts that will be discussed this afternoon. Project Connect, big shout out to Brad Wiener. This is kind of his baby, his brainchild. It is really us as a consortium supporting a collaborative meeting between folks at the state level who are in leadership positions, either because they are already part of an existing consortium, APE council, task force, collective of teachers who are like, hey, let's get something done, or influential members in the states to discuss, here's what's working in our area or our state. Here's current things that we're working on or fires we're trying to put out. And here are big issues that we continue to battle over and over again. One of the issues that we've heard about actually in the collective or Project Connect is unified PE, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I should mention at this time, Project Connect, the next meeting is next week on September 30th, and I know that NCPEID is going to push that information out, so if you're interested in joining Project Connect, please do so, and look for the Zoom meeting that happens about quarterly, okay? All right, unified PE, just so you all know, nationally, we've heard from a variety of different decision makers and concerned citizens, and we have shared collectively some key concerns, primarily that the language in the Special Olympics Unified PE documents needs to clarify that Unified PE is general PE, and as general PE, that curriculum needs to be aligned to state standards because Unified PE doesn't offer a curriculum. There's no curriculum to Unified PE. It needs to be the local general PE curriculum that's being integrated. And that Unified PE, while inclusive in its approach, does not preclude the need for determining individual learning needs in physical education through the special education process. So we can't circumvent the process. We still need to assess student performance, determine individual need, and then if needed, prescribe programming in the IEP and then deliver that programming in the least restrictive environment, which may or may not be unified physical education. It's not a one size fits all for all of our students with disabilities. And then And this was an important one, that as a general physical education offering, that unified PE should be delivered by a certified teacher that meets state requirements for physical education rather than a contract provider that doesn't have any teacher credentialing. I don't know if all of you are aware of this or not, but recently, in August, the Virginia Board of Education heard and then subsequently approved a proposal that allows unified PE to be a substitution for 9th grade and 10th grade general physical education, which is a graduation requirement in the state of Virginia. The Policy and Advocacy Committee provided comment against the unified PE proposal for a couple of reasons. And now that it's passed, we are working in conjunction with the Virginia Adaptive PE Council, and that's Brad, Andy Columno, Doug Avito, and then Justin Hagel and the other members of the council in drafting a response to Virginia's unified PE substitution for 9th and 10th grade PE. And then myself, Michael Laughlin, and Aubrey Shaw are revisiting our recommendations for the Special Olympics language in light of the decision in Virginia. Okay, so we think that precipitates us revisiting that and maybe adding a couple of pieces. All right, so what's next? We are continuing to put out these fires, address these issues, and support our teachers as best we can. We're also looking at some issues related to IEP templates where PE might be marginalized. For example, there's a template coming out from the National Association of Special Ed Teachers where physical education is pretty much nowhere. And we are looking at Project Connect driven initiatives. So what's organically coming out of those discussions in Project Connect? They will likely include initiatives to support state level efforts to either add or improve APE credentials or address ongoing confusion that APE is not or that APE is an instructional service, not a related service. People still are confused about that for some reason. We will support the new legislation that's likely to come out in South Carolina. So the prior bill plus the new bill that will likely be addressing assessment. We're trying to increase our membership involvement with the Policy and Advocacy Committee or ad hoc committees that are issue specific. So our collective advocacy efforts can be more impactful. Sometimes it feels like we're throwing pebbles into a cavern. And every once in a while we hear one hit and make noise, but it's a big lift. So the more the merrier. We're also looking at adding additional content to the website. So if there's something in particular that you need or you want, please let us know. We are in the process of developing a common issues document along with legislation that can be used to support appropriate services. And we're looking to increase our social media presence so that you know all of these things are being done on your behalf. Other than through this NCPEID APE collaborative. Okay, so just some ideas to wrap up. If you're in higher ed, please include advocacy training or discussion of the IDEA full funding history in your coursework or challenges of special ed funding. If you don't have that content and you want it, let me know. I'm happy to give it to you. Participate in Shape America's Speak Out Day. They are very open to including APE content, and I work with them when we go to the Hill or other national capital endeavors like CEC hosts an advocacy day, looking at state level advocacy days as well. Be a member of the consortium and encourage your students to join so that the next generation is here and a part of the good fight. Follow us on social media if you're not already following. If you are following us, then you're able to act when some of those time-sensitive issues arise, and then consider joining Project Connect to support practitioners in your state, and absolutely reach out to the Policy and Advocacy Committee if there's something in your state that we can help you with. Okay, and to do so, you probably should just send a quick note to me or to Brad Weiner. And I appreciate your engagement in this APE collaborative and what you do every day to help advocate for quality APE. With that, I will stop.
Awesome. Thank you, Suzanna. Matt, before you go, let's take a couple minutes for some questions for Suzanna, if anyone has any questions. Lots of really good information on advocacy across the country. Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Hi. Susanna, maybe you or Garth could talk a little bit about how important those policy letters are. I've used those many times with parents and teachers who have an issue, and I say, share this with your administrator. Can you talk a little bit about maybe your experiences with them? I can't stress enough how when it's on letterhead or it's supported by idea as opposed to some professor telling you this statement, how important that is. But maybe you could share your experiences.
Sure. Yeah, so to that end, actually, that's a great question. Thanks, Barry. Myself, Deb Shapiro, who is the current past president of NCPEID, and then some of the MAMC scholars, the Multi-Institution Mentoring and Adapted Physical Activity Consortium. We wrote a article for Joe Bird that was recently published that is essentially focused exactly on that. What are these policy papers? What do they mean? And how do you use them? And then the common issues document that we're developing to put on the website is an extension of that project. There was too much to include in the article, so that got cut and is being repurposed. But it's hugely important for our practitioners and administrators to understand what's in those papers so that they can communicate clearly to parents about what's in those papers. And the policy letters are essentially the federal government's interpretation of what is existing code. So there's no argument about it. So you can say, well, this is how it should be until you're blue in the face.
Right.
But when the letter comes across with OSER's stamp or seal on the top of it and the U.S. Secretary of Special Education's signature at the bottom of it, it carries a lot of weight. And as issues arise, I know Garth has been fantastic about helping craft inquiries and requesting letters of clarification. But as issues arise, as our field evolves and as school districts continue to change how they try to deliver services, we need to continue to request those letters of clarification and then use them, those policy guidance letters, in our fight to advocate for quality APE. Garth, want to throw anything on top of that?
Yeah, that was good, Susanna. Good summary. One of the important things to remember is that those letters were carefully researched, the topics, and they're on that preschool element, they're on the secondary transition age element. And so it was over a period of maybe, let's say, 2 to 3 years that we received a number of inquiries from the field about kids not being served at the 3 to 5 level and kids not being served, let's say 16 to 21. And then, as Susanna mentioned previously, about that ongoing confusion about related services and things like that. So those letters were very well targeted, and Barry makes a very, very good point about using those. Give those to parents so that they can bring into an IEP meeting. We've all heard multiple times where a special ed director or a school psychologist will say, oh no, we don't do that here in our school district. Well, you just need to have the parents, you have to have these materials in the hands of parents so that they can show them. And then, then if they still, kind of deny it, even though it's impossible, then you need to go the step further, like we had to in Maine, where we actually went with an IDEA state level special complaint because the special ed director in a district or two didn't believe those letters. So they're very important, but the most important thing is getting them into the hands of adapted physical education teachers and into the hands of parents.
Yep. I just wanted to pull this back up here. All those letters that we're referencing are on the NCPEID website. So if you go to the toolbar across the top where it says advocacy and click down, you can get to the PDF copies of all of those letters.
And the same people that formulate the rules and regulations for IDEA are the people that are answering those letters. Those are
Lawyers.
from the legal department within the Office of Special Education Programs, as Susanna mentioned.
Mhm. Carol Ann?
Hey, I'm in DPS in Denver, and right now I'm going through the SPED department telling me that we're not going to give adapted PE on IEPs anymore, and advocacy has been very hard. Do we have a document that says a SPED with a SPED outline on what adapted PE is and how it falls into the SPED realm?
Yes. So go first to the NCPEID guidance for administrators regarding adapted physical education and service delivery. That first page says, here's what state organizations, SEAs and LEAs need to do for APE or for PE for students with disabilities. Then behind that are all of the specific codes that are references to federal legislation and references to these policy letters that we just were talking about. That is in the page 2 and page 3 part of it. And then send me and Brad a quick email, and we will put the collective efforts of the PAC behind what you're trying to do in Denver.
Yeah, Carol Ann, it's just insane what's going on there. You know, what they're saying is similar to saying we're not going to do special education. We're not going to have any IEP goals. I mean, it's
They just want to put
completely-
modified curriculum on their IEPs, and I'm
yeah,
like,
completely, you know, inappropriate. I would also encourage you, you know, if it's, you know, a safe thing to do, encourage the parents to write letters requesting a full comprehensive special education evaluation that includes physical education as a possible specially designed instructional service. So get the parents to
Right.
write letters, and then the school district must, by law, actually respond to those requests. And if they deny that special education comprehensive evaluation, they must provide reasons why they're denying that.
And if you need to be protected, because this is not lost on us, that those of us in higher ed have a little like, we have one of those big bubbles, the sumo wrestlers wrestling, you know, we have one of those because we can't be fired by the LEA, but y'all can. So, and this actually happened in Portland, which is one of the states I didn't, or situations I didn't talk about, but I offered to do a Zoom call with all of the parents, the interested parents, because I can say things that you as a employee of the school district cannot say. Not that they're like illegal or anything, but you could, that's actionable for you. It's not actionable for me. And we're happy to do that. So just let us know.
And Carol Ann, that's also one of the reasons why we get these letters of policy clarification, because you as a teacher can talk to your special administrator and give them the law, and they'll say, oh, Carol Ann, you're just trying to advocate, you know, for your profession. That's one of the reasons why we got those letters, so that it's actually from the Office of Special Education, the legal department, not from Carol Ann.
Yeah, great questions. And I highly encourage you all to join us at Project Connect if you want to reach out for more information on that. With that, we will shift to Matt Barker, who is joining us, APE teacher and mastermind behind Just Adapt It. So Matt, I don't know if you're going to talk about that at all, but I'm going to pop that link in the chat. So Matt, go ahead and take it away.
Great, thank you. Well, first I'd like to say thanks to Suzanna and everyone on the NCPEID Council advocating for us all. It's really appreciated. Okay, let me see. Do you see my screen? I'm sharing, right? Yeah?
Yes.
Yep, all good.
Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, my name's Matt Barker. I'm originally from the UK. This is my 8th year teaching adapted PE in Fairfax County. I've got another 5 years in education. I was a special education teacher. I was a PE teacher for a little bit at a charter school in Southeast DC. And then I was also a paraeducator for a few years in New Jersey too. So yeah, my whole journey was like leading to this job, I feel, because this, like, I absolutely love it. And yeah, and you'll probably see from my website how much I love it. Which so I started justadapted.com, and I didn't start the presentation, so I'm going to show it to you quickly, although the Zoom gets in the way. So it originally started as a kind of like a t-shirt design. You can kind of see it here, the Just Adapt It with the Nike swoosh, kind of I'd say parody of Nike. I'm not trying to like steal their clients, but it's just kind of like a nod to them. So we tell our they've been telling us for decades, right, to just do it, but for some of our students they can't just do it. So it's our job in the profession to just adapt it for them, and that was kind of like the idea behind. So there was that t-shirt design, and then a Padlet, which I was just trying to organize all these great ideas I saw on Twitter, just trying to organize them: basketball, locomotor skills, and I just thought I wanted to do some more with it. So yeah, I created the website, which is about April, so probably about 20 months old at the minute. Yeah, and I started the newsletter at the start of this school year, and I just kind of wanted to, just like Suzanna said, like amplify the adaptive PE voices, and just like get as much information, ideas, resources to as many like people in adaptive PE as possible. So I'll go back, and I'm just going to show you this week's newsletter, just so you can kind of get an idea of what it's all about. So I always like to start with a teacher spotlight, and I would usually show the tweets here, but because I'm on my school computer, I think it's blocked Twitter, but you can usually see the tweets on the site. So this week was Brad Hunter, who's the Maryland Teacher of the Year, and he does some really great stuff. Like, he's got really great relationships with families and his students. So kind of wanted to highlight him this week. Next week's going to be Heidi, because she's doing the APE advocacy channel, which I want to like promote and highlight that as well, for all the work she does on like the social media as well. Just every time someone asks a question, you know, Heidi's going to be there answering it. So just kind of like just saying a thank you to her for all that she does. Then there's I'm going to go over more of this later, but there's some adaptive push-up ideas. We've got the APE study group dates, just letting people know. This modification, I actually did this today with a class, using I got the idea of Katie Smith on Twitter, just using a Velcro vest as a catching modification to kind of stick, and the student kind of gives them a bit more time to get their hands around it. And then this is like a gamified version. So it's just stuff you can get on Amazon for $20 and kind of like take to your students for an adaptation. Then I also want to, I'm not an academic myself, but I also would like to highlight the work that they're doing. So this week it was Dr. Hergaley, and so I don't know his first name, but he went to the university. He's at the university I went to in England, Leeds. Beckett University is called now. It was Leeds Met when I went, but Bo, sorry, my dog. Sorry, the mailman's here. And my dog's barking. Bo. Shh. Bo. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so I went to the same university he did, but they're trying to reframe inclusion, the word inclusion. So it's not just they're in the same gym as the Gen Ed peer, so it's inclusion. They want us inclusion as an experience, a feeling that the student feels, rather than like where they're placed. So that's really some solid work. And then all these professional development opportunities I see online. So there's a free ASL course. There's then NCPEID from last week, the recording, I posted that up there so people can see. And then I also posted about this upcoming one as well, so people can know about that. The annual Minnesota Adaptive PE conference, which is happening this week. My friend Jeff Watkins, he's off over there packing his bags at the minute. And then the podcast with Chris Aarons, which is blocked through my county. And then some merch. You can get the design on a t-shirt if you want. I wear mine up quite a bit. And then just ways to stay connected on Facebook, Twitter, just to be part of the community. So that's kind of what the newsletter is all about. And at the minute, it's every week I'm doing it, but I'm gonna see how long I can go before I burn out. It might have to go to once a month or something, because it's like I post down and I'm thinking about the next one, trying to get everything loaded, and yeah, it's quite time consuming. So just more about the website. So I've got some videos which will hopefully play, which is not. What's going on? Okay. So this is, I'm just going to share some of the ideas that I've been doing in my class. So this is what encapsulates just adapt it the most. So a student who's in a gate trainer playing a tag game. So just a simple using a pool noodle with some hands attached. And are you going to play? You're not seeing anything, right?
We can see your screen.
Do you see the video playing?
Not the video.
Matt, it might be a Zoom setting.
There we go.
Now, you see that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do it this way. Yeah, so that first student, I think she definitely felt that feeling of inclusion. She just had the biggest smile on her face. So I think if we asked her, do you feel included? I would have hoped she would say yeah. Here's another one, just another pool noodle. I like my assistive technology a lot as well, but I also like just really simple modifications, just using really simple stuff like pool noodles, yoga mats, just to like adapt for our students. So this is a jump rope, which I kind of adapted so you could like control the speed of it and just work on that jump. And that's actually my son. The demo is not quite there yet, but he enjoyed jumping over it. But yeah, the idea would be to stay in the spot. And the best thing about like posting stuff like this on Twitter is there's about probably like 5 or 6 people who did it themselves, and they would post videos and say, oh, I did it as well. And it's just really like a nice feeling, you know, sharing something that people themselves are going to use. This is so I'm kind of working on another project, kind of making this a frame. So I got the idea when we went out to the United Arab Emirates in Sharjah. They had all these like frames for stuff. So I kind of like wanted, like, why have they got all these different frames? And we can just kind of like make something that's you can modify to meet the students' needs. So here it is like a pickleball net. And there's modifications on either side. So there's kind of like a zip line for the ball. The students can like hit it and it kind of slides across. And then on the other side, they can hit it and it kind of moves as well over the net. So I always like, you know, the modifications to be, I'll turn it down a bit. Yeah, I always kind of like want more modifications, whether it's with technology, otherwise, like as closely relating to that skill as possible. So the students are hitting a ball over a net, right? There isn't a structure there, scaffolding for them, so it's easier to hit and easier to slide over, but it's still that skill. It's just modified, adapted. And then with the help from a non-profit that I work with, he got me some like fancier pipes. So this is the latest version of that frame that I've been using. So it's kind of like a bit of an obsessive project I've been working on for like the last 6 months or so. So every time I get a minute in my office, I'll just be like, oh, I'll work on this, and I'll, just think of different ways you can put it together to like meet each student's needs. Okay, I'm going to start the slideshow, so we should be good now. Oh, no, not from beginning. Sorry. Where were we? Okay. So some other resources I like to share. So Connie Johnson is a PT in our county, in Fairfax County, and she's one of those like overachieving, she's just amazing. She's written a book and she's got this project and a website called Fit for Work, and it's all about having students like a sort of middle and high school level work on the strength exercises that they need that was going to get them jobs in their adult life. So me and Phil, the bald guy in the GIFs, kind of made some GIFs for her, and we like wrote some posts that I put on Just Adapt It, and she's also used it on her website. But just some GIFs that people can use, and we put them in like a post of different I've forgotten the word, sorry. Like a way to like work up to independence. So the first one, push-ups, so just using a resistance band around the waist. This is like being a really effective modification for like probably the most effective for push-ups that I've ever used, just a round resistance band, and you can yeah. I've had students show really, really amazing growth, and then using that vest again to gamify it, make it fun, and that's another good tactic for building that strength. Squats, just using something to sit down on. I always find, like when we do squats on our video warm-up, a lot of the students don't bend the knees, and I've got to say, I touch the floor, and it's not something just automatic. So having something sit down on and then back up, and then in that GIF, the kind of I take away part of it to get them lower, and just ways of modifying it. Using a wedge, this is a good one for students working on sit-ups, working on that ab strength, makes it a little bit easier to get up, and then with the aim of removing that modification, the wedge, by the end. So that's some fitness stuff that they do. And then we also wanted to do push, pull, and lift exercises that are going to mimic functional skills that they'll do in the workplace. So this one's just picking up and hanging something on a hook. This one's one of my favorites, just working on sweeping skills, but it's also working on strength. You can put heavier stuff if you want to make it a bit more challenging, but the skills that everyone needs to have, really. Lifting weights. So I've got some filled milk cartons, lifting up from a low place to a higher place. A lot of vocational skills, working in supermarkets, just all stuff like that. And there's loads of these as well on the website as well. These are just a few examples. Weighted suitcase, walking it around an obstacle course. Some pull techniques. And then 2-person lift. Use mats, use something heavier. I've also got like a martial arts mannequin that's like full of clothes that you can lift up. That's really good for like, so it's pretty heavy, but it's like carrying a person, and I use that a lot in my classes too. Okay, and then so my advice for anyone is present. So not only is it good for our like community, we need more people like talking about it, sharing influence and policy, sharing best practices, all that sort of stuff. And I'll just kind of tell you my story of how I got started presenting. So I came into the county year 1, and my boss asked, who wants to do this autism course? It was like an online course. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then she's like, do you want to present? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I'm like a first-year teacher, and I'm sat there presenting to like 25-year like veteran teachers about like visuals. You know, I was just like really thrown into like, but I'd done a course on it. I thought I'm gonna like the best way of learning something is to teach it, right? So that was my whole philosophy. I'm gonna put myself out there from year one. I'm just gonna like try and do it, and no one was like condescending to me or anything. Like, oh, what you do? What do you know? You're first year teacher. Everyone was just sat there quiet, listening, joined in, and it was nice. And that was just a start small. That was like we've got like 50 or so teachers in our department, and it was just kind of like a rotating station. So we had like 10 people at a time. But that's how I started. And then year two, in this top picture, we collaborated with kind of an offshoot from like the course I did. We ended up doing a ABA in adaptive PE, and we went to the ISAPA, an international conference in Charlottesville, and we presented our work on there, and we created all these videos, and we did a couple of presentations there. So that, I think that was like year two or year three. So yeah, I'd say just don't let like have your enthusiasm do the talking rather than like, you don't need that experience if you're enthusiastic. And I enlisted the help of ABA therapists, and I was more of just the video guy, but I thought that was a good, like a big step to take into the ISAPA. And then just this year, so yeah, I've been presenting at lots of different state conferences, probably about, I'm not sure, but I'm going to Pennsylvania, Virginia, Colorado this year. And in March this year, I went to United Arab Emirates, where I met Dr. Bittner and loads of other amazing adaptive PE people from California. And it was really cool. So yeah, I went and presented for 20 minutes on assisted technology. So that was a really great experience. And then from that, next month in like 2 weeks, I'm actually coming out. I'm going to Shape, Colorado, in Denver, and then I'll be in Long Beach, California State, and then I'll be down in San Diego teaching with Chris Aarons down there. So yeah, it's like really exciting stuff can happen. You know, you just got, if you haven't presented before, take that first step, and just, yeah. I guess my other thing was to say I can't say no. Like if people ask me to do something, I'll be like, yeah, and it's I always end up like, oh my God, I've got too much to do. And I feel like I've hit a wall. I don't know if it's the weather because it's rainy here, but I want to sleep at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon every day, but I've got to like power through. So and just get an early night. What are we like for time? Okay,
Got a couple more minutes.
Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to share the professional organizations out there. So at NCPEID, obviously, doing amazing stuff. There's the North America, correct me if I get any of these abbreviations, I should have written it all out. But there's the IFAPA, who do the ISAPA conference, and they, every 2 years, they're somewhere else. So I think 2019, they were in Charlottesville, Virginia. I think 2025, next year, they're going to be in Ireland. And then 2 years later, they're going to be in Jordan. So I'm going to try and put something together to go to Jordan. So that sounds amazing. And then the NAFAPA, which is the North American version of that international association. And then you've also got all the state APE organizations, SCAPE, being around for years, doing amazing stuff with you guys run the national conference, right?
Yep.
You've also got MAPEC, which is the Maryland one, and they accept memberships from all over. You don't have to be in Maryland to join there. So that's a good one to join and follow. We've got our Virginia, which is a new one. Brad and Adam Forbes and a lot of other Virginia people got together and started that. That's just for Virginia at the minute, but if you're in Virginia, definitely join that. There's a North Carolina one. And then, yeah, just join there's the PE Shape America, and then all the state subsidiaries like Virginia APE, Shape Pennsylvania, stuff like that. And then I think it's National Association of Health and Physical Literacy. That's another one to join too. So I hope I didn't butcher any of those abbreviations, and I think that's it.
So great. And I think this is a great combo of what we do in higher ed plus what happens out in the field. So I think this is a great example of what needs to continue happening is that bridging the gap between practitioners and higher ed faculty. So thank you, Matt, for sharing. Thank you, Susanna, for sharing. We've got
Yeah,
a few
thank
more
you.
minutes. So if anyone has any questions for Matt, let's go ahead and pop in the chat. Or unmute yourself. Oh, Barry.
Hey, Matt, so really nice newsletter. I've enjoyed your newsletter. Pretty ambitious when you said you're going to do it once a week, you
Right.
know, and so eventually, but I think a couple of things is maybe shouting out to people about sharing their ideas with you, you know, would be
Yeah.
a thought. But the other thing is, you know, since we're here on this advocacy, is the idea of, can you talk a little bit about getting your newsletter in the hands of administrators, you know, and letting them see what's going on, and maybe working with Suzanna and Brad and the committee and the consortium, because there's a lot of grassroots, a lot of practitioners are doing great things. But there are a lot of states where there's really nothing happening in adapted, and there's no presence and whatever, and they don't know what could be, you know, what
Right.
really good adapted physical education is. And so I guess what I'm saying is what thinking about the future of your newsletter and how you could use it to really promote advocacy and get it into the hands of people that are that really don't know what adaptive PE can be. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love like for people to send me stuff to put in that I can like about advocacy and stuff. So yeah, if it's anything you ever want putting in a newsletter, like you've sent me some articles already, and
Yeah.
no, I'm asking anyone know a teacher who wants who's like doing amazing stuff, we can shout out and stuff. So yeah, I'd love for more people to kind of like contribute to the newsletter. So getting it out to like administrators about what adaptive PE could be.
Can I throw an idea out there? This is
Yes,
a
please.
Dave Martinez through and through. This is not a Suzanne Dillon. He was the master of, as new things would pop up, he would push it across his administrator's desk. So he was building rapport and building knowledge before there was an ask. And that
Right.
is key to advocacy. So it's not necessarily even on you, Matthew, but you could put in there, hey, if you think any of these ideas are great, share it with your curriculum director, share it with or whatever, just dropping that in there. But I would agree with you, like any way you can get other people to help you with the lift, that's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
getting the information across to them before you have an ask is important with their relationship.
So Matt, like for example, when I taught at the university, one of the things I would have my students do an assignment where they had to put a simple newsletter together. And I said to them, now in the future, I want you to, now you have a template, I want you to put a newsletter. It can be once a quarter, you know, whatever, but make sure your administrator, your superintendent, your school board, because too often in adaptive PE, I feel like we're speaking to the choir instead of the people that, you know, administrators that are making the decisions, and just getting it out to those people is so critical, because a lot of times they don't know what could be and what really good adaptive PE is.
Right. No, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think
some
having
good
something
thoughts.
in there about if you think like advocate for adaptive PE,
Right.
yeah,
having maybe an advocacy corner in there,
Yeah.
just like, you know, because I feel strongly, one of the reasons I keep sending you articles is one of my pet peeves is I think practitioners, teachers too often are so busy they don't read as much as they could. And some of it is our fault as university professors. We should be providing theory to practice type articles that they can wrap their head around and that they can use, you know, in their teaching. And so those are, you know, all things that they're going to look at your newsletter, you know, a teacher.
Yeah,
So,
hopefully, yeah.
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 All
So,
right. Well, I would like to be mindful of everyone's time. So once again, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Susanna, for joining, and thank you, everyone, for popping on and learning a little bit more about advocacy. So
yeah.
have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks,
Thank
Amanda.
you.
Great
Bye.
presentation.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Matt. See you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, see ya.